Hey guys, can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you, Damien. Um, just want to go over quickly. Obviously, we ended up with what I suspected was a day of balance. That's exactly what we got. So, the area that I wanted to cover in particular, let me spread this out here a little bit, was the open. So, we got this gap. Let me get my drawing tools out here. We got this gap right here, and we failed to get any kind of move towards half gap or gap fill. Um, and we had three consecutive bars above each other, and this usually looks like a potential trend day up, right? And then the other key to that was in the for the first half hour at least, all the ticks. Let me see if I can't grab this so y'all can see it easily. There we go. All the ticks were sitting above zero. Now, there's obviously something had gone south on us, right? And how do we identify quickly that this was not actually a true trend day up? So there's a couple things that I spoke about in the morning that needed to occur in order to maintain a trend day. So first of all, we had no news coming into the day. It's hard to get a trend day without any news moving events. We had the president of the ECB speaking. That was the only thing that was out there that could have possibly really driven us. Number two, look how weak the tick is relative to the up move, right? Second clue. Third clue. Shortly after 9 o'clock, the tick turned, the majority of it actually turned negative between 9 and 9:30. This is a big clue that we're no longer in a trend day. This is very rare. And in a moment, I'll go back and we can look at the prior trend day, which was yesterday, and we can see how different that'll look. The next clue was, and I laid this out, I said if we go above the overnight high, which is what this area is right here, and then we trade back below and we hold, that we had very good odds of trading to the other end of the range. 18.11 and a quarter, I believe, was the overnight low, and we traded back to 18.12. And I actually had a long sitting there waiting for 18.12, and man, it went bid and just simply didn't fill me. That happens some days. That's unfortunate. But the key things to identify, just very, very quickly, is the fact that we did get stuck back underneath Globex highs. That was a failed move. And then the last piece we're going to go over and look at NQ. NQ simply was not as strong. And interestingly, if you paid attention closely, right in between that 9 and 9:30 area, right here, right at the high, ES actually started hitting new highs in front of NQ. And I think I put something out, it was probably on the private Twitter stream, but I put out, hey, this is a change in behavior. This is not usual. Usually the NQ is taking off and ES is kind of trailing up behind it. When ES starts leading, right, and there's clearly been no rotation out of NQ, that was kind of the mystery clue that hey, we weren't trending up. But that being said, right, how do we know we're going to go into balance? Well, the other thing that I said through the course of the day is that, and I repeat this all the time, this is not any kind of industry secret. If you come and tag at 500 here, and you make a tag at 500 here, okay, the and I know I mentioned that this morning. The majority of the ticks all day long will stay in between plus 500 and minus 500. If you don't have that on your if you don't have that on your in your notes, if you don't know that, and you should have it on a checklist somewhere, right? When you see this activity, know that the market's just going to slowly meander from point to point. And what this tells me more than anything, when I get a market like this, is to slow my trading down significantly. Okay, because this is where guys get chopped up, they overtrade it, and if you'll look, it's really pretty interesting. First, we give a head fake to the upside, right? We trap the longs. Then we give a head fake to the downside, right? We trap chasers at the bottom or people who are panicking at the bottom, drive it all the way up, and then look, we just barely clear this last swing high right here to give the appearance, right, that we're actually going to come up and break out again. And what does it do? As soon as we get that, we rotate back to the downside and we trap everyone that was up here back to the bottom. And then on the close, we drive it right back to, unfortunately, if JD's watching, I made a bet with someone, right to 1816. So at any rate, those are the clues to look for. The key to being successful on a balanced day is simply not over trading it. As soon as you identify you're in a balanced day, let the market get nice and stretched. It's always going to look like it's about to break lower at the lows. It's always going to look like it's about to break out at the highs. The open was a bit difficult, right? But then again, if you look at it, there was really no place to take a trade according to my, one of the ideas behind how I have the trade rule structured is there was no reason to take a trade in this zone at all, and we didn't quite reach the zone above. But even with that, right, 1817 would have required us to go to 1823, and then I would have needed a zone. And as a matter of fact, I had made a mistake on the zone. There should have been another zone right here. I believe it should have been 1823 3/4. And I just flipped this back around. I meant to lower it 2 ticks. Instead, I raised it 2 ticks. But that should have been the zone. But even then, it didn't tag that zone. There was no reason to take a trade there. You had the rotation. Back to the downside, right, from 1823, you could have taken a trade here. There just wasn't a whole lot of reason to do so. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure if I said it out on the private Twitter stream or whether I said it out to the public in general. But the reason I didn't want to take this trade was this is yesterday's high. If we had a strong market, it would have looked like this. Breakout, come back and barely test, maybe just penetrate in, and then take off this way. We would not have gotten underneath and started consolidating on the bottom end of this zone. That is not a strong pattern. This is a strong pattern. Okay, so when I saw this, there was no need to take the trade at this point. I wanted to stretch, and I pretty much called 1812 out way ahead of time. We were still trading at 1815. I said 1812 was the location. The reason for that, again, I focus on the rotation size. 1818, I need at least 6 points of rotation to get a trade, so 1812 would be the first place I would look for trade location within the zone to get a trade-off. So there wasn't any kind of rocket science there. I didn't see anything magical or mystical. I simply wanted to find where I could get the market nice and stretched. I assume it was balanced, so I knew I didn't have to worry about looking for 10-point rotations. I could focus on 6-point rotations. Again, part of the reason I don't mind, and just for whoever's on, part of the reason I do not mind giving a lot of this quote-unquote information, it's not proprietary, but the structure, outside of knowing how to do the zones, which takes some time and it's a skill you have to develop, it has nothing to do with making money. The place I make my money is in doing my homework. And so I want to talk about that for a second in terms of how I was able to shift over and make this a successful day. So yesterday I had over pretty much all the way around a bad day. Let's see. I tried to push my own point of view onto the market. I thought we were going to roll over to the downside. I was obviously completely wrong. I didn't follow my own cover rules when I got my 2-point rotations. I basically didn't take my profits. I did not sleep well the night before. I was rushed going into the day. I didn't take my time to meditate in the morning prior to the open. All those things kind of added up to me having, instead of either a slightly down day or actually even I had the potential for a profitable day, I turned that into a losing day. So how did I turn those things around today? Well, first of all, I wasn't over eager to try to trade in here. I didn't try to push my ES trades on either direction, even though I did think we could roll over to the downside. Again, I didn't force that hand. I let the market set it up for me. What I would have hoped is that we could have gotten a stretch up into this zone and I could have gotten a trade, and then I could have left possibly a trailer in back to the other end of the range, but that didn't happen. So fine, no big deal. I didn't force my hand. I did get an NQ short up here, and I'm pretty sure I published that this morning. And that trade paid me nicely, and I had 2 more NQ shorts actually through the course of the day. So I ended up having all my trades that I took were profitable, number 1 today. Number 2, the trade that I missed, ES, I am not upset about not getting filled. I would have liked to have been filled. But where I placed my trade, I did so textbook, exactly the way I laid it out in my trade plan prior. And then the last piece is I didn't allow myself to get frustrated. I focused on following my procedures step by step. And that's resulted in me not having a bad day. And then when it got to the 10:30, 11 o'clock period of time, because I needed a good day, I did not run a trade past this point of the day right here. I let someone else have it and was more than happy to let them have it. And as you can see, this is where the meat of the money was right here, right up into here. And this was all Chop City and very difficult obviously we eventually whittled down to 2-point ranges, and who the heck wants to trade in that? So at any rate, it was a rather short. Oh, I did want to show on the tick. So you see the tick's plus minus 500. If you'll look at the tick again, this is a measure of how many stocks are going up versus down on a per transaction basis, but it's on the entire New York Stock Exchange as opposed to simply the S&P 500. And contrast that to yesterday's. Didn't mean to move that, but that's fine. So be it. Okay, look at the open here yesterday. We're immediately stretching up to 600. We did have right prior to the econ data, we did have a few negative ticks, but for the most part, we were all positive. All the ticks were positive, not only up, but the strength of the move was also positive. Also, look, right here, as ES came down, it barely came down. It was more of a sideways motion relative to what the tick was doing, right? It pretty much traded sideways through here. And then obviously when we got our next rotation up, it worked exactly as it should. We got another boost. You'll notice that we really didn't get any significant negative ticks all the way till 10 a.m. in the morning. And even with that, again, another hallmark of a trend up market is you get a big negative tick series and absolutely zero rotation or very little rotation to the downside. That is a hallmark of a trend day up market. I'm trying to think if there's, and then you'll notice through the majority of the day, all the way until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? The tick was predominantly and massively positive. Now I'll come back and look at that same thing on our day today. Opposite picture, right? We started off positive and we stayed relatively positive for the first hour. Again, we didn't have any news to shake the market down. However, look at this. While we're up here, the market's already leading down and it's going down as the tick is coming down, and it gets pretty negative pretty fast, right? And we keep falling. And then what would you know even furthermore, when the tick does rotate up, look, we're barely getting any rotation up to the upside. So what did we end up having, right? When I described it in the morning, we broke out, we failed, no, I didn't mean to do that. We broke out. We failed to break out. We got back below Globex highs. Traders were trapped. We pushed to the other end of the range. This was Globex lows. We didn't quite push all the way. Once we completed that move, we simply traveled to the other end of the overnight range, and we balanced all day long. So you just got to be cognizant. So where do people run into problems with this trading? And this is where they do. So they'll see a day like today, right? And inevitably they'll go, oh, look. They'll take a look at the zones and they'll go, well, I could have simply multiple times, I could have, shorted here, bought here, shorted here, bought here, and made money all day long. Okay, so what the trap is in that is that usually the market goes from balance to imbalance. Now, this is a very tight range. This is 1822 to 1812. It's the smallest range we've had, I think, in 2 weeks. So usually when markets consolidate like this could simply be a pause, right? Because we really didn't give back very much territory in the day. Simply a pause, and then we can continue to move higher the following day. If tomorrow we gap up and go, and you're still going with this same philosophy of I can trade multiple touches in the zone, you'll end up with a day like this where you'll end up getting smoked on second touches, right? First touch, well, the zones, if we'd seen it yesterday, these were points of resistance. First touch in would have rejected, second touch would have smoked you. So go back and look at your charts. Balance days are deceiving. Newer traders tend to love them because you can keep reshorting the same zones over and over again. I consider them particularly dangerous because of the precedent that they set. Because when we do move out of balance, it'll be fairly vicious, and it's very rare, even on normal days before we expanded these 20 and 30 point ranges, it's very rare to get a third touch and get rejection out of the third touch. I think it's a terrible habit to try to game these balance days and start taking second and third touches on a regular basis. It'll smoke you. So anyway, it's 319. I've actually got a couple of, I want to take, almost not done, but not quite. Let's take a look at NQ really quick. Okay, on NQ, we opened up. One of the things that I said I was looking for was a proper size rotation, right? And these zones were a little bit wider. So the reason why they're so wide is because over the last couple of days, these are the zones that have been paying me, right? And these zones inside I've been less likely to take. So what I said is I wanted a minimum of a 10, but really a 15-point rotation. If we look, this is just below 35.65. So if I look at a 10-point rotation, right, I want the minimum of a 10-point rotation down. So that puts me right in here. Now, why would I not want to take this trade right here back to the long side? Quite simply, because this is prior day's high, and we've now, just like I described before, we've trapped. So if you look at the distance we traveled, this was roughly 34, let's just call it 36.34, all the way down to 36, almost 14, right? That's pretty much 30 points, guys, right there. And I said that's the rotation the market's been working off of all day. Now, I didn't have a zone there, and the market wasn't quite as snappy as I wanted it to be. There were definitely scalp trades here. My coaching clients know what those were. I do not go over those with anyone except my coaching clients. However, that being said, the market simply didn't stretch enough. Had we held here and rotated lower, we would have had a beautiful rotation back to the upside. It just didn't happen. But the point is, I'd rather give up these moves zone to zone than get trapped tomorrow when we go back to a 30 or 40 point range. Because NQ can be very dangerous if you get accustomed to trading these ranges very narrowly. It'll destroy your P&L very quickly when it goes back to a normal market. So that's kind of my 2 cents for the day. I actually have a couple of minutes before my next coaching client, so I'll actually be happy to entertain a couple of questions as long as they're general questions. And they don't require too great a detail to go into. I'd really like to answer them in regards to the psychology and how you prepare yourself mentally to trade well, or some of those pitfall areas, although I'll be happy to look at a chart for you if you'd like me to as well. I have a Australian Shepherd, all white, very sweet and loving. She's made guest appearances from time to time. Yeah, I know. Anyone else? Okay, I'll give it another minute. If a question pops up, I'll answer it. But all I want to stress is whatever you're trading, guys. So the chart part of it is the small part of it. The mental preparation and confidence is the big part of it. I had someone ask me today, well, why are you going to take 12? Is it a big enough rotation down there? Don't you think it should go, maybe 08 or 10? And that's a normal question, right? Because look at the environment we've operated in. Part of the hard thing with the market, right, is that we have had these huge rotations, and if people have been getting smoked on the zones, that's a very normal reaction to go, hey, I want to take a further step back. The problem with doing that is that there's no place there's no place on the chart that's ever safe. Any zone can get busted, and I have no idea which zone will get busted. So how can I take the trades with confidence? Well, I go through great detail to make sure I have my statistics on each and every trading day, right? Did this zone fail? How far did it fail against me? How far did it go in my favor? How many times did it touch? That kind of thing. Secondly, even if occasionally I stray from my trading plan and I try not to, I'm very quick to get back to it as soon as I recognize that I've made a mistake. And all of that lets me go see through history, which is why when I start coaching people, I encourage them to paper trade it first, right? Even if I have a bad day like yesterday, I can go back and look at literally, at this point in my career, thousands of trades and hundreds of trading days and go, oh, first of all, I've actually had down days. I've actually had days where the zones failed back to back and I got stopped out for the day, right? But then if I look at my P&L for that week, by the end of the week, I was either flat, or actually positive. That gives me a tremendous amount of confidence when I trade, because I know going all the way back to, I think I start this data bank all the way back in 2002. The second thing that I know when I go into it, that I've prepared well, that I've learned to trust myself, that I'm not going to violate my own day stops in particular. If I get 2 stops back to back, I'm done. lots of other things to do besides sit there and trade, right? The other portion that is very important to me is I actually have people who are checking up on what I'm doing, and I mean outside of my coaching clients. I have my own trading coach, and he knows what my trading plan is, and he'll come back and look at me. We meet once a week or every other week at the most, or at the least. And he'll look and he'll go, well, you said you were going to do X, but when I look at your trading day, you have A, B, and C. What's going on there? And then he'll ask me the questions surrounding that. But the point is that I'm accountable to him, right? Not only my family, but it's amazingly easy to be unaccountable to your own family, right? You figure, well, it's my money, I earned it. But when you actually have a peer that's sitting there and you're actually paying him by the hour, and he goes, well, look, you said you were going to do this, and you did that. You go, okay, I don't want to answer those questions too often because then I look stupid, right? In addition to having lost money, because I know those rules are what is best for me in the long run. So it's a combination of staying accountable and following the structure. And then the last piece of that is I know that my edge works. I know that I'll usually get a pause and a rotation at those zones, and I don't have to trust anybody to tell me that because I've been doing it for so long. At first, when I started using them, it was hard to trust myself with it. But I learned if I just simply take the trade, right, with the right rotation size, that even without the rotation, I know that I probably will get a rotation out of that zone or a pause at the minimum. With the correct size rotation, I know my odds skyrocket from 70% to pretty close to between 80 and 85% success rate on a regular basis. So that gives me enormous confidence. And the reason why I don't trade, you'll see people on Twitter and Skype asking me, why am I not trading the afternoon? The afternoon is simply harder and sloppier than the day session is. That's all there is to it. There's no way around it. And if you take your time, and if you'll, and what my experience has been with coaching other people, I get guys that come in and, we all want to make money and we see a million trades and we see this trade and we see that trade, but we never sit down and master any one trade. But once those guys can let go of trading the last hour, trading multiple trades outside of the zone, messing with the stops, once they can let all that go, does it get a little slow and boring? A little bit. But then they make the shift from defending themselves because they know their stop will protect them, right? Once they go through it once or twice, they see very quickly that they recover from that loss very, very fast, and your fear level drops in your mind. The next thing you start to do is you actually start to observe the behavior in the market, and it's very easy to go, oh, hey, look, I've noticed this particular pattern seems to work. And then you can take that and start doing the testing just like I've done on the zones. Well, does that trade actually make sense for you to pick up one day? And you realize there's no rush to trade everything out there. Master one trade, increase your trade size, become relaxed in how you approach the market. And then it's not such a freaking gamble or a mystery each and every time. You pretty much come to have an expectation and a rhythm of how it's going to work. And then when you end up with days like today where we go, this looked like a potential trend day up, but things aren't operating correctly. Like, for example, this morning prior to 9 o'clock, right? This is NQ, Daisy. Mia, will you please take Daisy outside? Sweet, thank you.
Daisy.
When NQ started to falter early, right? That doesn't fit the pattern. NQ's been super strong for days in a row, and even though they kind of brought it back up and took it up again, even look, right after 9 o'clock, we're already back below overnight lows here, right? And they've got traders trapped right in here. And what do? We pushed almost to the other end of the range completely. But when you free up your mind to do that, you'll notice those changes, and then you'll be able to call audibles on your own trading, or you'll be able to look quite simply like I did, and you'll go, hey, that looks like a trap trade. And instead of struggling to capture the trap trade here and guessing whether it's going to work or not, you'll simply come around and go, oh, look, I can just look at the other end of the range, right, somewhere down here, and I can simply wait for the market to come to me. I don't have to get into the difficult part. I can take it on the easy part. There's ways to get into the difficult part if you want to do that, right? But the easy part of that trade is just wait till it comes to the other side of the range and pick it up. And if you know it's a balance day, you know you have good odds of just riding that thing to the other end of the range again. And that's exactly what happened today. So what I would encourage is two things. First of all, Brent Steenbarger has a book called The Psychology of Trading. Fantastic book, really explains why it makes trading difficult on us sometimes. The number two thing I would recommend is find someone who's a peer that can hold you accountable to what your trading plan is, and you can answer at the end of the day, why did I do this or why did I not do that? It is frustrating at first, but it'll make it so much easier for you to make money in the long run. And it's what every professional trader does. Most professional traders, if you'll read the Market Wizards, the new Market Wizards, anyone who's made a lot of money day trading in particular, focus on that. Those guys didn't have 100 different markets and 100 different trades. Most of those guys had one or two markets that they had mastered, right? For example, I remember the New Market Wizards, there was one guy who was a bond trader, and for the most part, he made all his profit, literally millions of dollars a year, on 2 to 3 ticks per trade. Now, I have no idea how they did that in the pit because that was another decade and another century. But the guy knew his spot, and when they talked about other people talked about this trader, they would say the guy would stand there stoically all day long, not make any trades. And then all of a sudden it got to a point, and usually that point was where people were panicking, and the guy would know exactly where we were going to take a trade back to the upside. He would take his trade, and then he would start flipping it back out. Maybe he was just flipping it back out 2 or 3 ticks higher, but it was very quick that he was feeding it back to the market. If you also read that same story, you'll see that guy had days where, I'm pretty sure it's in the Market Wizards, he drew down to his max loss for the day, and he just simply called the market wrong on those days, or the market went against him on those days, and he didn't blink. He came back the next day, he adjusted mentally and did that same thing. So meditation helps you do that. A personal trading journal helps you do that. And if you can't afford a trading coach or a mentor, there's guys like me that you can pay. Find someone on the internet. God, there's got to be some room or someone out there with someone you can trust and go, hey, here's my trading account. This is the size I'm trading. This is my trading plan. And I want to send my results to you at the end of the day or once a week. I want to sit down and review. And I want you to hold me at my feet to the fire. The thing is, when you're paying someone to do that and you're paying them a good amount of money, you'll pay much more attention to what it is they have to say, right? Because it's hard to stroke those checks to somebody and not get any results for it. So that's my 2 cents. I hope that was helpful to someone. If y'all need help or you're having a difficult time getting a trading plan and my trading style doesn't suit you, there's lots of really good traders out there. Drop me an email and I'll be happy to refer you to a couple of guys that I know actually have great trading plans and are willing to share them with the general public. And anyone can make money trading. It's really cool business. Just take your time, learn it well. Okay, guys, have a great night. I hope I helped someone out there.